Hey YouTube, it's November, which means it's time to start thinking about Thanksgiving and the accompanying side dishes. One of my favorite things about Thanksgiving is cranberry butter. Don't buy the cranberry jelly. Ugh, it's so easy to make. This is probably one of the easiest things you can can if you want to try your hand at putting up canned goods. This doesn't require any special ingredients. It doesn't require any special tools. You don't even need a big pot. Like, you don't need a canning pot for this. You don't need any clear gel or anything to set this up. It's just going to be sugar and fruit. So if you're on a no sugar diet, look away. I'm going to show you some tools that we need for this, but there's not many, and you could literally get by with no special tools. As always, when we are canning things, I love my jar lifter. Canning funnel, because it just makes it easier to put things in jars. A little magnet lifter for the lids. You will be using non-reusable canning caps with the little sealing compound here. And I keep these in warm water while I'm canning things, and you use this magnet to get them out of the water. And I'll show you a trick about that when we get to that point, so you don't burn your fingers on the water. Then you'll be using the reusable rings, of which I have about 1 million. I'm doing these in half pints. This recipe will probably make 4. It says 4, so I always get out an extra jar. I'll probably make 5. I love these little tiny half pint jars with the little jelly, quilted look. And it has, I don't know if you can see it, but it has a little smooth spot right there to put a pretty label. So if you were going to give these as gifts, perfect time to do it. I use a ladle because you're going to be ladling this and it gets really thick. You're going to be putting it in jars. Ingredients. Super easy, and right now it's the time to look for these cranberries at the store. They're just going to be in the produce section. Fresh, real cranberries. I don't think there is such a thing as organic cranberries, or I would find them. You're going to need 2 bags of 2 12-ounce. You are going to need a cup of water, 3 cups of organic sugar. Gotta have sugar. And fresh lemon and fresh orange peel, which I don't have. And I completely have cheated every single time I've done this, and I do orange peel and lemon peel. I do a teaspoon of each of these. Something about citrus with cranberry is lovely. The only other thing that I always have on hand is a measuring tape, which we will come to later when we are putting things in the jars, because you want to measure the headspace to make sure you have the right measurement. And after like 32 years of canning, I've never guessed that right by eyeballing it. I am not even using a big stock pot for this. I'm going to get stuff cooking, but this is what I'm going to use. This is just to show you that you can do this. Like, you could do this in a home kitchen with things you already own. Any pot you have that will hold these in it with at least 2 inches of water above the jar, you can use to can. So this, I don't know if you can see this pot, but it's definitely deep enough. The only thing I do when I can jars in like regular pots, not canning pots, I will actually put an old little washcloth on the bottom, and this already has some water in it. It's kind of hot. That was dumb. I put that in the bottom so that you have, excuse me while I dry my hands, so that you'll have something to put those jars on in that water. Once you get the jars in the water, you're only going to be holding this at 200 degrees. So it also would help to have a probe thermometer on hand to stick in that water, because you want to hold it at 200. And anything you're doing with pressure canning or water bath canning, check your altitude, because the time is going to be different for each different altitude. Like for every, I think it's for every 1,000 feet above sea level, you change it by 5 minutes or something. Look it up. Anyhow, I'm going to put the cranberries. This is all this is. You just put the cranberries in. You put the cranberries in a pot with the water. So into the water, the cranberries and water in the pot. And I am doing a teaspoon of each of the lemon and orange zest, and we're just going to sprinkle that over the cranberries. And there they are. Everything's in the pot. You can see the coating of the lemon and orange peel, and a little bit of water in the bottom is really just to probably make the berries not stick to the pan. We're going to turn this on to medium heat until that comes up to a boil. And then we'll reduce the heat, cover it, and simmer it until all the skins pop and those cranberries are nice and soft. So you're going to simmer it for about 15 to 20 minutes. And don't forget to come back during that time and stir this pretty often, because there's not a lot of water in there and you don't want these to stick and burn to the bottom of this pot. Make sure it's not too hot once you get it simmering. The last tool that I would highly recommend, if you don't have one, but it's not completely necessary, a food mill. So there is one special tool, but you could do this without it. And this is just, you put things in it and you're going to be able to get, I use this for like tomatoes, for all my sauces. You can use this for applesauce, and I mean a million different things. So if you don't have one of these, you should probably get one. But you can make this without, because you could press these cooked berries once they're cooked down and cracked open and soft. You could press them through a sieve, but it's going to be, I don't know, this just makes it easier. If, I don't know where I got this. I probably got it on Amazon. If I did, I'll post a link in the description. You can actually hear them when they start to pop. I'm going to turn the heat down and give these a stir every so often and put a lid on them for about 20 minutes, and we'll come back. Those are looking pretty good. Well, this has been about 20 to 25 minutes simmering, and you can see most of them are broken open, and they're all pretty soft, but I like to just make really sure that they're soft, because you're going to want to press these through that food mill. I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat. And before we put those through the food mill, I will show you my little magnet trick, because I'm old school. I don't even know if you need to do this anymore, but I put these caps in warm water, like fairly hot, but not boiling at all. And just to soften the little compound that's on there. If you put them in the way they come out of the box like this, and you use the magnet to get them out, you're probably going to pick up more than one. And if they're in water, you're going to have a little seal, and they're very hard to get apart, and you end up with a little burst of hot water that will burn your fingers. So my trick that I've learned over years and years of canning is to put them in alternating. So put one face up, one face down, one face up, and face down. And then in the water, when you go to grab one, they're going to be more like that, and they're easier to get apart, and you won't have as much trouble with them. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in the water while we are putting this through the food mill. So we're going to bring this and take my ladle, and you can just take the hot cranberries right out of the bottom of this pot, and you can see this could have been done in a much smaller pot. And just put it in the food mill, and I may be able to get about half of it in there at once. So again, this is pretty quick. And this particular recipe says, you know, put it through a food mill and then clean the pot and put it back in the pot. I don't know if it's lazy or not, because you're going to be washing two pots, but you're going to wash one pot twice, so it doesn't matter. And you just push that through, and you can see it coming out, and it just pushes the beautiful sauce through and leaves the skins, and any seeds and whatnot are going to stay up in the top. So this is a terrific little tool if you don't have one. I've used this for so many random things over the years. I'm going to go ahead and finish this and get it back on the stove with the sugar, and then it's just a matter of basically reducing it down to where it's thick enough to put in jars, and it's that simple. So I went ahead and put this back on the stove in this pot, which is a wider, shallower pot, and we're going to now add this 3 cups of sugar. So as you can tell, with most jams, jellies, preserves, there is a high sugar content going on here. And I'm going to put this over a medium-low heat and just continue to stir it until the sugar is completely dissolved. And once the sugar is completely dissolved, we're going to just simmer this on a fairly low heat until it is quite a bit thickened. We want the sugar completely dissolved, and then we want this to thicken. And I will show you the trick to tell when your butter is thick enough to go in jars. And that would actually apply to any butter. You can do a fruit butter with any fruit. I've made apple butter, pear butter, pumpkin butter, banana butter, cranberry butter, like pretty much any fruit you can do this with, and it's wonderful as a spread. So I'm going to stand here and stir this for a long time, and then I'm going to pop in now and then, and we'll watch it as it simmers down to the right thickness. So this has been simmering on low, all the way low heat for 20 minutes. And this is where I'm going to start checking it, and I'll show you the trick to see if this is ready yet. And you can see it's simmered down a little bit. You're just evaporating some of the liquid out of it while it stays warm over this low heat. And there is sort of my little secret hack is that I like to use a wider, shallow pot for this part of this process, because you have more surface to heat as this simmers down. If I found if it's in a narrow, deeper pot, it'll take longer to thicken up. So here is the trick. To check and see if this is ready, what you're going to do is take a little just take a little glass plate. I like a white one just so you can see. And just dip out, like, this like a half a teaspoon. You don't need much. And just put a dollop, like kind of put a little pile of it on a white plate. And then watch it. If I can get that close enough to the camera. And what you're watching for, see that little edge of liquid, sort of, you know, a little ring of liquid that's sort of separating out or on the bottom of that, but it's staying heaped up. So that looks really pretty good. So if a little puddle of that liquid separates from that, that would not be ready, and you'd want to keep simmering it a little bit longer. But if it keeps its shape like that, where it stays mounted up on the plate, as it has, see, it's kept its shape. That looks wonderful. So I'm going to say that is ready, and it's got a nice little glossy finish to it. So we are going to get this in some little jars and get it in a 200-degree water bath and process it, and it will be done and ready for Thanksgiving. All right, we have our beautiful little jam and jelly jars. These are half pint. And right now, all we're gonna do is get this in these jars, and we're looking for a 1/4 inch headspace, which is going to be the distance from the top of the jar to the top of the butter. And I just use a ladle, and we just put it in the jars. And you can try and eyeball a 1/4 inch if you want, but I just use a measuring tape because I've learned over the years, and especially with pressure canning or some of the soups and things, if you get too much in the jar and your headspace, especially if there's too much, I'm gonna set that right there. If your headspace is too much, and you, especially when you pressure can, you can end up with the food being forced out between the lid that's here and the rim of the jar, and then you get food particles there, and then your lid won't seal down and you won't have a sealed jar. So this is where I take my little tape measure, and I just always do this just to at least eyeball this first one and get an idea of what a 1/4 inch is. And you can kind of use I use these as your, like, a guide, so you can say that right up to that ring of the jar is a 1/4 inch. So I just need a little bit more, and I'm actually just gonna, because this is a fairly thick sauce, I'm gonna just use a tablespoon to top it up a little bit. I just want it to be right up level with that, kind of that ring right there. And then I use a paper towel. You can use a wet washcloth, and just make sure that you go around the edge of that jar really well so that it's clean before you put that cap on. This is where your little magnet will come in. I've got the lids in the hot water over here. Pull out, there's 2, and you can just slide them apart instead of having a burst of water go down your fingers. And you can just set that right on the jar, and then you've got your ring. And you don't tighten these, like, you're not trying to tighten it on and keep it on because you're so strong. It just needs to go to where you get resistance, and then just finger tight, just go one little push past that. So the ring is really just to hold that cap in place with contact on the glass until the processing, either the heat or the pressure canning, takes place, and that's what actually seals that lid down. So that one's ready. I'm gonna go ahead and fill the rest of these. I have 5 jars out, and we'll see if we get 4 or 5 jars, and then we'll get them in the water. All right, so we did end up with 5. One of these is a little bit less full, but there's 5 beautiful jars here, and these they make such a nice gift if you want to give these at the holidays. So these are ready to go in the water. This is where you're going to need your jar lifter, because we're putting them in water that's already about 200 degrees. So we're just going to, there's my little washcloth. I'm just going to use that to set them on. So that's why this is possible with a home kitchen and just no special tools. So it makes it a lot simpler to do things like this if you're wanting to just start easy on making canned goods. So I just added a little extra water because you want to make sure that you've got about 2 inches of water above those jars. And I just use this to measure, and that's definitely enough water. So we have this at 176 degrees. So we're going to bring this temp up to 200 and just kind of hold it at 200. And for my altitude, I'm going to hold it at 200 for 15 minutes. And then we will turn off the heat and let them sit in this water and cool down for about 5 minutes before we pull them out. So we turned off the water and let these sit to cool down for 5 minutes. And we're going to, this is where you use the jar lifter. And I like to try to not touch these rings when you go in to get these jars out. So I go down carefully just to the jar and lift that straight up out of the water. And Look how beautiful that color is. These make such a nice gift. See that pop? That one just popped shut. That seal already happened. So I just carefully bring these over and set them on a towel to rest and cool and continue to seal. And as that lid cools, then it will stay sealed. And these will all start popping as they come out of the water and sit and cool down. And then once they're all sealed up, I come back the next day and I'll write the date and what's in the jar on the cap. So there they all are, and they look really, really nice. And a few of them have already popped down. 1, 2, there went that one. You can listen for that little pop, and if you ever can, you'll get to know that sound, and it's one of the most satisfying sounds as a canner because you know that your jars have sealed once you see that jar lid pop down. So there are 5 gorgeous little jars of cranberry butter, which are perfect. The red is gorgeous, they're delicious, they make a perfect little gift. But I was thinking while these were processing, if you don't want to can anything, you could make, like, this is 5 half pints. You could make a half batch of this and just put it in the fridge before Thanksgiving. And then you could still enjoy cranberry butter without having to learn how to can. These are one of the easiest things I can imagine learning water bath canning with, because it's really simple. There's not a lot of special tools. You can do it with pots you already own. So this would be a great way to start. Either way, whether you can it or make it fresh just to have in your refrigerator, try this for Thanksgiving. There's still time and you will love it. Once you make this, you'll never go back to buying that stuff at the store. Don't. Just make this. See you in the next video.